Um, oh, recording, well done. So as I was saying, as a startup, what you need resources, you need financial resources, you need human resources, you need your staff, you need money, and of course you need to have clients, people who are going to buy your product. And how do you get both resources, whether it's good staff who will stay with you, or money and clients? Is you've got to have a unique value, something, a proposition which is unique to you, which you can really show how your product is better than others and why they should want it. And how can you do that? How can you show your value beyond any financial reporting? This is where impact comes in. Your value is beyond the numbers you're producing, is the sustainable social and environmental value that you're creating in the world. So that basically, in a nutshell, for me, is why we measure our impact, to demonstrate the value we're creating in the world. Oh, sorry, just struggling here a second to get my slides. There we go, sorry. And, you know, beyond demonstrating the value we're creating, of course, we all want to do the best we can in the world. We want to maximize our value. And this is where it becomes so important, the measuring and management, because then, of course, we can increase it. So we maximize our value by showing how our offer stands out from others. We have strong impact metrics, and we're different to the company down the road because this is the good stuff we're doing in the world. Also, when you can link your impact metrics to, you know, global standards such as the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal targets, and we can talk about that if you'd like in the discussion session. If you show how what you're doing is contributing to, you know, decreasing poverty, or increasing, you know, gender equality, or providing education opportunities, or making the oceans cleaner, you can show that you fit your company becomes part of this kind of global movement for making the world a better place. So that can be quite exciting as well, however small it is. I mean, just a little example, I worked recently with a company here in Geneva that makes straws out of potatoes and manioc. And the reason why they do that is because they want to make the oceans cleaner. And you might think, what difference does it make, you know, that they're going to just save a few kilos of plastic with their straws? But think, when they frame their work within, you know, the SDG target of oceans, and they look at themselves together with hundreds of thousands of other businesses and organizations around the world also decreasing plastic waste, then they can see that they really are making the oceans cleaner. And that's just a little example of why I think can really help to bring in the SDGs as well, to put yourself in that bigger context. And of course, you know, once you learn about how your users, how your clients are experiencing your product, or how the oceans are becoming cleaner thanks to your product, you can learn how to do even better. And of course, then you're going to attract even more clients, and your business will grow further, and your sense of purpose will also grow. So those for me are the two reasons why I think it's really important to measure your impact: demonstrate value and maximize value. As I say, anything isn't clear, just put a note in the chat, and I'll either address it straight away or at the end. Now, I've talked about impact. Maybe it's important to take a step backward and just to check what do we all mean the same thing by social impact. You know, in a nutshell, I think social impact is most easily defined as a long-term benefit to society. Notice the word long-term. When we speak about impact, we're talking about something which has enduring value, not just something, you know, not something short-term. And I'll come to the difference in a minute between output, outcome, and impact, which I think can be helpful sometimes. This is something in the resources I would recommend for those of you who want to go a bit deeper into impact. impact management project. It's really it's a kind of state-of-the-art consensus, should we say, between impact investors and other people in the space of social impact for business. And it's a way of sort of defining impact a bit more broadly than just saying, oh, it's doing social good. It's saying, well, what do you mean by social good? And specifically, it's developed this model which divides up impact into 5 different areas. And it's really helpful when you're trying to define what is the impact of your business, or in your case of your business hub, or the businesses of one of your members. What actually is the impact there you're trying to have on the world? You know, what outcome, what's the benefit that happens, the what? How important is the outcome to the people? Who actually experiences the outcome? Who are your end users? Who are your clients? And also, are they the people who most need this service? If you're working in low-cost housing, for example, are you actually reaching those people who need that low-cost housing? How much, you know, is the impact you're having very deep? Is it really affecting people in a very profound way, such as maybe a scholarship or an immunization program? Or is it more light touch, like some leaflets and information campaign? A contribution. What do you do? What is your contribution to the cause? We talked about SDGs before. What are you specifically doing to help this particular cause you care about? And of course, risk. You know, it's important to think about what might go wrong. So I've gone over that really, really quickly, but I really recommend the Impact Management Project for those of you who want to go into this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so we've talked about now what is impact. We've talked about why measuring and managing your social impact is important. And let me briefly now introduce how you can go about doing that in 3 steps. Notice I'm kind of sometimes saying measure your impact and sometimes managing your impact. Does anybody feel brave enough to unmute themselves and just volunteer verbally or otherwise in the chat? What's the difference between measuring your social impact and managing your social impact? Why am I using those different terms? Does anybody want to venture a guess, either aloud or in the chat? I think my course, I played safe. I think I called it how to measure and manage your social impact. Any ideas as to sort of why? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you say manage, is it like how are we executing our activities to create the social impact, and measuring is to see the output of what benefit or what outcome has been reached through our activities?
I think that's really perfectly well expressed. Thank you, Abana. I think that's exactly it. Kind of measuring is more specific. It's like, okay, what actually have you done? Let's go and speak to the end users, or let's look at how many kilos of plastic you saved through your plastic straws. That's kind of measuring, as you said. Managing is a little bit broader. It's more, how can I use that data to actually enhance my impact, to improve? You've mentioned activities, Abana. How can I use the data I've collected to make my activities even more impactful? So that's why I think managing is really it's a heavy term, but I think quite a useful term. Okay, so what are the 3 steps then to manage your social impact? Step 1, I think, referring back to what I was saying, it's really important to actually define your impact clearly and to show, crucially, how are you getting there? How are your activities? How's your product or your service, in the case of business, getting to that impact? And it sounds really obvious, but it's incredible how difficult it can be actually to create something really, really simple and clear and engaging. So we often use for this what we call a theory of change, or some people call it an impact value chain. I'm sure many of you will have heard this term, and people can be a bit scared of it, but actually it's quite straightforward. So theory of change is basically a map. That's how I see it. It's a map where you're putting on paper the kind of, as I say, the link between your activities and on one side and your impact on the other. So often one can start with a problem, with a challenge. What is it in the world that you're trying to address? In the case of business, what's the market gaps that you're seeing, that you're wanting to deal with? What's your solution? What are the activities you're doing to address the problem, the challenge, the market gap that you identified? And once you've got that, you think about, well, what's my immediate deliverables? What's my output? What's my immediate product? And that's called my outputs. And from that, you begin to get here now towards the impact side. How are my deliverables creating change in the world? How are my customers, my beneficiaries actually getting benefit from my products? And that's your outcomes. And then you get to the interesting bit, which is the impact. And the impact is, as I mentioned before, what's the long-term value? So, okay, so now your beneficiaries, in the case of the straw company, the ocean, is cleaner, it's got less plastic. What's the ultimate impact? Well, we have a healthier ocean. If maybe somebody here, can one of you just give me an example of a social enterprise that you're working with? I prefer to use one of your examples. Anybody put in the chat or verbally, what's the social enterprise that you might have in your hub? Perhaps you yourself are a social enterprise. Well, while you're thinking of that, I'll just give another example, but please give me one of yours. I'd love to hear what social enterprises you're working with. I mean, one recently that I thought really captured the notion of social enterprise so nicely is, again, it's a startup in Geneva, and it's a Colombian woman, a Colombian migrant here, whose daughter has Down syndrome, a mental learning difficulty, and the enterprise that this lady is creating is to create a cafe in Geneva, selling Colombian coffee and Colombian sweets, employing people who have learning difficulties. And it's very clear, isn't it, how that's a social enterprise, because a very clear, business model there, like any other cafe or restaurant. But also it's how can this cafe or restaurant enhance the life chances of people with learning difficulties. So here the impact, the outcome might be that people with learning difficulties get a better life chance. And the impact could be a world where everybody can fulfill their potential. That would be the impact. We're trying to create, your impact goal is really looking beyond, kind of a bit of blue sky thinking. What's the kind of world you really want to see? So in that case, outcome is, as I say, people with learning difficulties have a better ability to be inserted into the workforce. And the impact could be, a more diverse workforce, or, as I say, people having the chance to fulfill themselves. Okay, I haven't seen any examples there. Please continue thinking about examples of social businesses that you're working with, or that you know of. Perhaps you're a client of a social business. Good. So there's a theory of change.
And yeah, we have one hand up. Jordan.
Hey, Joanne.
Hello. Thanks for that. I just wanted. Can I share about a social impact venture?
Yes. I'd like you to.
All right. This is just an idea that I've been developing over time. So right now I'm just trying to sort of like find like a investment, start prototyping it. But the idea is basically the fact that a lot of farmers here in my community are sort of like having a reduction in terms of like protein in animal feeds, and so they're basically been previously relying on soya beans and fish from the lake to sort of like provide protein for animal feeds. And what I'm looking at right now is developing a maggot farm I know it sounds a bit creepy, but yeah, so it's a maggot farm, and basically maggots are proven to have high protein for animal feeds. And basically, so I'm trying to get farmers to move away from sort of like overfishing in the lake, and most likely, usually, the fish in the lake is sort of like contaminated with plastics and other pollutants and stone and sand. So if they could sort of like rely more on protein from maggots, which can easily be produced at zero carbon, production process, that will sort of like create a world whereby humans don't have to compete for protein with animals, and as well as having a sustainable supply of protein in animal feeds.
Amazing. Joram, thank you. I think that's, I love your idea. I'd love to hear how that develops in due course. And I think that's an absolutely perfect example of a social enterprise, because it's clearly a business. You're going to be hopefully, making money and having a return on your investment. At the same time, you're making you're dealing with a problem of lack of protein, not just for animals, but also for people. And you've also got several environmental benefits there as well. So thank you for sharing that. I think it would be really interesting, if we have time towards the end, we could discuss what are your impact goals, what are your outcomes, what are your outputs. It would be a really fantastic really fantastic example. So let's keep that in mind and come back if we have time afterwards. That's okay. Is that all right, John?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Great. Wonderful. So we've got some other examples. Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah. There's other examples in the chat which we'll come to in a minute. Thank you for sharing those. Okay, so the importance of just to recap then, the importance of theory of change is that it really helps you to work out what it is you want to do and how you're getting there. It was also, I think, quite important by differentiating your outputs, kind of the immediate deliverables. So, in the case of Joram's farm, I guess the outputs would be the creation of the maggots. That's what he's actually doing. That's the immediate deliverable. Differentiating that from the positive change he's creating.
Tanya, I don't know what happened, but we can't hear you.
Tanya, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Tanya? Did something happen to your mic? Maybe maybe mute yourself and unmute yourself again.
Is better now?
Ah, yes, we hear you again.
You're back.
I was saying, can you hear me? But because you couldn't hear me, you couldn't hear me asking me whether you could hear me.
That's right.
I'm sorry. Now, I don't know how much you lost there, but I was just really trying to reiterate the importance of separating in your mind your outputs, the maggots that you're creating in Joram's case, from the change, the benefit that having these maggots have on society, on the customers. It's very important to differentiate that. Important, to be really clear to potential investors, why your business is important, but also it's very important because the theory of change is basically the building block upon which you're going to create an impact management plan. So those are the reasons why it's really important to have this map, to clarify your message, what you're doing. And in fact, incidentally, I just had one little thing there. When you clarify this message, if you have time, let's take in your case, in Joram's case, if you involve
other stakeholders in creating this kind of map of your activities, and you can make it quite pretty. I'm just going to put here. You can make it quite pretty if you involve others. This is some visual presentation of theories of change. If you involve your stakeholders, it's a really fantastic way of getting buy-in from the start. So, for example, in Joam's case, if he goes to the farmers and say, "Hey, this is the problem. How are we going to address it? What can we do?" You get a wonderful buy-in at that point from all the people involved, rather than saying, "Okay, this is the solution I found for you." So the theory of change, the process of creating it, can be a fantastic way of getting buy-in for a new business. So theory of change is important then to clarify what you're doing, number one, and number two, it's really important as a building block for your impact. You're creating an impact management plan. So before I turn to the impact management plan, just a little bit more on how to create a theory of change. Here's an example, just to clarify a bit some of these concepts. So the example here, I just took off the top of my head one of the kind of chains from what you guys might be in impact hubs might have. So what's the challenge? The problem you're addressing as an impact hub, as a business hub accelerator. The challenge you might be addressing is that many wonderful entrepreneurs in where you are, in Cameroon or in Gabon, they might lack certain skills. So they're brilliant, they have great ideas, like Joam's idea, but perhaps they need some more skills. So that's the challenge you're trying to address. Okay, how are you going to address it? What's your service? In your case, perhaps one of the things you're doing might be to provide weekly learning sessions. Or in the case here of ITC, this series of seminars is, every month, here's a seminar to help people to learn. There's the activity. What's the output? What's the immediate deliverable from those weekly learning sessions, or in this case, the seminar? Hopefully the teams you work with will learn new skills and knowledge. Today, hopefully you guys at the top of the hour will have new skills and knowledge around impact management. So that's your immediate output. So at this point, we haven't yet really got to a change in society. We've just said what happens straight after the activity, because the change will happen, of course, if you, the people participating in this call, or in your business hubs, if your members of your business hub then go and apply that change. In Joam's case, if he could create kilos and tons of maggots, but if nobody actually uses them for their agricultural feed, it's been a bit of a waste of time. So outcome becomes very important. What's the use? What is the benefit of your product? So hopefully, in the case of a Business Hub Accelerator, your members who have been coming to these weekly learning sessions can create, as a result, stronger enterprises, by which I mean their financial figures increase, and of course their social impact increases, if they're that way inclined. Impact goal, what's the longer term effect? Well, the longer term effect, of course, would be regional economic growth if you have stronger enterprises, because people are then buying services and products locally rather than from elsewhere. And of course, social impact will increase in the region, whether it be, in the case of Joam, cleaner lakes and more protein available for farmers rather than the protein going to their animals. Okay, so that's a theory of change example. I know I'm going quite quickly. As I say, my course goes into all this in much more detail, lots of videos with a huge number of examples. So you can really, if it interests you, you can go into the course and learn about all this in much more detail. There are lots of exercises as well. We haven't got time this morning to really practice it, but you can do that through the course. I mentioned once you have your theory of change, it's quite nice to make a nice little infographic. Clients might like it, your potential investors might like it. It's a nice way of just playing around. I know quite a few on this call are designers and writers, so you can really have fun with it. when you want to create a theory of change, as I mentioned in the course, I mentioned a few different ways. I've created a template, which is available through the course. You can use on Excel if you think in that kind of way. Other people must prefer to make it much more visual and to kind of use the sticky note approach. So you can use sticky notes literally, on a wall, or you can use an online sticky note such as Jamboard. Otherwise, what's very, very helpful if your internet connection is good enough is an online platform. Now, the Business Call to Action Impact Lab, it's a very interesting platform created with UNDP. And basically, it allows you to go in there. So in Joram's case, you could literally go straight to that platform and you could say, this is my goal. And it will walk you through all the steps to create what they call an impact value chain. It's the same thing as theory of change. And what's nice is that when we come on to the next bit, the indicators, it then takes you through how to create indicators and KPIs. It brings in all the SDG indicators. It's very comprehensive, and then you can download it as a PDF. It's really, really helpful. So if you have got a good internet connection, I would recommend that to build a theory of change, because it's also quite fun. It just makes it a bit more fun, really. It allows you to create targets as well. I really recommend that strongly. What you might want to do, Myra, or I can do it afterwards, you could just put in the link, actually, because I realized with my links, no one has my links. You could put in the link to the BCTA Impact Lab in the chat if people want to actually use that platform. Okay, so you've got your theory of change or your impact value chain. The next step then is, well, how will you know that how will Joram know that he actually is, how many kilos of maggots he's creating per week, and whether people are using them, and crucially, what's the benefit of using maggots? Are those farmers' livelihoods actually increasing, or are they decreasing thanks to the maggots? Are the health of children increasing because now they're eating more fish that's going to them rather than to the animals? So how will we work out what impact your business has got? So you want to think about indicators and KPIs, key performance indicators. You want to make sure that you include reach and depth. Again, I hope, Joram, you don't mind me using your example so much, but it's nice to have a concrete example. You want to include reach. So in other words, how many farmers is Joram's business going to impact? Is he working just with 10 farmers? Nothing wrong with that, but it's different. He's working with 10 or if he's working with 1,000. So what's the reach and depth? Is it going to be light touch? Is the farmer's life not really going to be impacted because all they get is, all they can buy is perhaps 1 kilo of maggots. So one day a year they can give maggots to their livestock, but the rest of the year they carry on as normal. That would be a relatively shallow impact. Or is it going to revolutionize the way they manage their livestock and revolutionize their life by increasing their livelihood and by having better nutrition for their children who can then go to school, etc., 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 maybe better healthcare? There's so many different things that can happen. So you want to include indicators where we'll look at the amount of change you're doing in terms of how many people get affected and also how much do they get affected. You want your indicators to be smart. Again, the course goes into this in detail with lots of examples of an indicator which isn't smart and an indicator which is smart. Smart, to remind you, is specific, measurable, i.e. there's no point in Joram having a very, very elaborate way of indicator, very elaborate, such as, for example, an indicator could be the improvement in health of children aged 5 to 10. Why is that not a good indicator? I mean, it's a very good indicator, but maybe wouldn't be good in Joram's case, because how could Joram single-handedly, as a new social entrepreneur, have the resources to measure the health of children aged 5 to 10? He can't, and therefore it's not a good indicator. It's not measurable. Specific, measurable, attainable. Does it make sense? Is it realistic? Is it relevant? Will the data you get be important for you? And time-based. Are we talking about a month, a quarter, a year, the lifespan of the project? So basically you wanted to define indicators to collect evidence to assess your progress. We can come back to indicators at the end if you would like. The third step is now come back to what the lady Abana was telling us about, managing impact, is that you want to be able to actually do something with this data collection and what you're going to do with impact. So again, I like to work in threes, as you probably gathered. when you're planning your impact management plan, I see it as three steps. You want to think about what data am I going to capture and collect. Notice I use two terms there. Don't just say collect data, I say capture and I say collect. I think that's quite important and helpful distinction. Joam, who might be looking at, for example, one of his indicators might be, well, how many kilos of maggots he's produced. That data, he doesn't have to go very far to collect it. He'll probably have that in his management dashboard. Every day, end of each day, he'll be getting his maggots, he'll probably weigh them, he'll have that data. So when he wants to report against an indicator of a KPI, in this case, a KPI of total volume produced per week or per month, that data will be in his internal dashboard. So he's going to capture that data. However, if Joam does want to have a look at what's the impact on farmers' livelihood of using his maggots versus the food they used before, he'll probably have to do some data collection. He'll probably need to talk to the farmers a bit and ask them, well, has your livelihood increased or hasn't it? And that would be either through a survey, it might be through an interview. He'll need to work out a plan to collect data. In my course, I talk a lot about data collection and how to really make it simple. I talk about lean data, where you really try and get data that's going to be only relevant to you, but also you think of ways of collecting it in an easy way. So rather, say, than Joam going around house to house and talking to all the farmers, which might take him days of his time, and then he'll have all these notes written up on in notebooks. What do you do with that? He could, for example, send an SMS survey to his farmers, and just through a simple SMS, ask them 2 or 3 key questions that are really going to help him understand. So in the course, I try and give examples of tools and methods to make that data collection really, really straightforward. So once you've got your data, what you do with the data, is it going to be stored in Excel? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be on a database, a platform such as the business calls to action? What are you doing with data? How do you make it link together with other data sets? So that all that needs to be thought about in advance. Finally, you want to think about, what do I need to learn from this data? In Joam's case, he'll probably want to know the question of, well, he might want to know, for example, if a farmer uses my maggots, 5 kilos of maggots per week, he's able to make a difference to his income, for example. But if he only uses 2 kilos of maggots per week, he can't, because he's still supplementing maggots with too much other food. I mean, that's completely off the top of my head, but you want to think about what are the thoughts and questions which will help you to do a better business, and what indicators will help me get there. So if Joam's question is, well, actually, how many kilos must a farmer use per week to make it efficient, then that will help him when he goes to sell his product. Guys, there's no point buying 2 kilos. Buy 5 kilos, don't buy any at all, for example. Finally, communication. Who needs to know the results of your data collection? Is it just for you to learn? In this case, is it for Joam to learn between 2 kilos and 5 kilos? Or does your impact investor need to know? In which case, he or she probably wants some pretty nice charts. Perhaps your clients want to know. In this case, perhaps Joam wants to have some lovely case studies of a farmer who has really changed his whole life and his livelihood thanks to the maggots. And he might have a video of this farmer, which he can then show to other farmers who will then come and buy the product. So you want to think about, where will you communicate your data? Because that will help you decide what sort of data you want. Do you want just numbers? Do you want stories? Do you want pictures? Do you want videos? What do you want to collect? And if you think in advance, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble later on. So that's basically as far as I want to go today, other than our discussion. If you want to go deeper, please look at my course. I think is starting next on the 15th of November, which is next Monday. Altogether, I say 1 to 3 hours. I mean, I guess probably 4 hours if you do every single exercise and watch every single video, but you can do it quite quickly if you want, or you can spend time on it. You can download also the module so that you can sort of come back to it later. So I recommend it if you want to go into this in more detail. There's 2 modules. The first module is that whole bit about defining your social impact. What does it mean? And that whole question we talked about, you know, why is it important to have your theory of change, your impact value chain? You look at the difference between immediate results and long-term benefits and why that matters. And the second module is about creating your plan. So that really going into the nitty-gritty of what to do and how. And so you're looking at how to define your indicators and selecting from those indicators and KPIs, and looking at this 3-step impact management plan. A few resources here. Myra, the participants don't get this, do they? So if you feel like, if you have the time, Myra, just during this discussion, to put a few of these resources in the chat, some of the links.
Tanya, I will circulate this to everyone who registered. Yeah, in a follow-up email.
You don't need to. Great. So you'll
Might be easier.
all of these applicable links. The course is the top there. Templates, the templates I mentioned for making your, which are also on the course, but you can have them here as well if you can't do the course, for doing a theory of change and an impact management plan. The impact management project I mentioned, that platform I mentioned. If you're interested in communication, one of my colleagues here in Geneva, Paulina, she's done a lovely step-by-step guidance specifically for this course. She did it as a pro bono, but for users of this course, ITC course. So look at that. SOPACT has great videos on all this, really short, to the point. And then I just put a few examples there on the side. So thank you. I would like to, that's my email if you do need to reach out to me individually. I'm also on LinkedIn. I love having LinkedIn connections with people doing interesting stuff around the world like you guys. So feel free to connect with me. That's probably the best way of entering into contact. And I would like now to open up to thoughts, comments, reflections, and questions. So I was just looking, and while you're thinking of what comments or reflections you have, I'm going to quickly read what Tino Mutenda and Ernest wrote earlier. But please say any thoughts you've had, any questions. I mean, a question I have for you, I guess, is, you know, what brought you to the session today, and how do you intend to use some of what we've talked about? I would love to hear. That's my question to you, is how are you going to use this idea of impact management in your work, or how do you use it already? Please feel free to unmute yourself or to write in the chat.
We have one hand up from Chino Mutenda.
Are you able to get me?
Yes.
My name is Patrick, working with WIAC, Women's Entrepreneurship Access Center. I think this course or presentation is very, very important in the sense that there's a lot of impact that has gone unmeasured. And I think it will be very useful for us to measure the impact of our entrepreneurs. And these days we are seeing the impact investment being promoted. So it has been very difficult for one to access that impact investment or want to convince somebody who would want to invest using the impact investment drive or channel. So this course is very, very important, such that it will help me as an individual as well as my institution to look at what are some of the impact stories or the impact that has been made that can help us promote this social enterprise, which hasn't been promoted. If you look at it very closely, you'd find that a lot of our entrepreneurs are also in social enterprise, but it's not known that this is social enterprise. So for me, it's something that has opened up my mind, though I just joined in a bit late. So I'll be trying to be asking you some few questions. I saw your email there.
Yeah,
so that's
and well, welcome. And as I mentioned, have a look at my course, because it goes into a lot of detail, and some of the entrepreneurs you're working with, do direct them towards the course, because it is very straightforward, and there are lots of videos. I think people who've done it have often said, the feedback we've had is they really like the videos, the examples, because they found that quite inspiring to hear from other entrepreneurs what they're doing and how they've gone about it. So I recommend that, Patrick. I love the way you mentioned impact stories. I'm not sure I really stress that enough, that it's all very well collecting numbers and showing how many kilos of this and that, but a few really nicely expressed stories with a few nice photos goes so far, particularly to attract, not just to attract clients, but also impact investors. They want to see your numbers, but they also want to get the more a feel of your company. So thank you for that, Patrick.
Yeah, and now, Tanya, the course, you said that's going to be an online course. I didn't see the link. Are you going to share the link with us?
Yeah.
For us to go into that course?
Myra, do you want to put it in the chat?
I have put the link on the chat already, but we will also share again by email for everyone that registered.
That would be great.
But it's already in the chat if you want to check it out.
Okay,
now.
The link to the course, I've seen it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I can see it. Oh yeah, there it is. I can see it. Thank you, Myra.
But it would be better.
We have a few minutes left. Would somebody else like to share? Oh, Tino has his hand up. Tino Mutenda. Would you like to share?
Hi, yeah, thanks. So I think you had asked the question, how will we then use this in how to manage our hubs? Well, for me, my being actually here was to stand in for somebody else. So I appreciate that the content will be sent afterwards. But basically, yeah, it's just one of those situations where, especially with the pandemic and everything, it's been a bit difficult, to even be able to be helping out some of the entrepreneurs, because we as a hub ourselves have been, struggling so much, to be able to keep everything afloat. So I think it's important, to be able to take just, a step back, be able to analyze where are we in terms of our goals that we have set, and figure out how to then pivot, because I think that's what has happened, ever since COVID-19 showed up. I think everybody has been pivoting in how they're running their businesses and startups. So that's definitely something interesting for me that I'll probably use this for, and even in my own work. Yeah.
Oh, I'm really, really glad to hear that. Thank you, Tino Mutenda, for sharing that. And I see NICE has also shared, we work with many startups in Tanzania, and this course is going to help me communicate with them on what social impact they want to bring to society and how. Also know what to ask and what to measure. That's great, NICE. I really hope so. Good. I mean, okay, just before we close, any final burning question or comment? And then I imagine, Myra, you're going to want to close before the hour. Tino, okay. Thank you, Tino.
No, maybe I think we received a few comments in the chat saying that they will use the course also to help manage the impact of the accelerator in itself, not only of the companies that they support, which I think it's also a very nice application of this course as well.
And I think it's really interesting with that. I mean, we're doing that at Accelerate 2030. Some of you may have heard of that. ITC is very much involved with us. And what's interesting is when we're looking at the impact of the accelerator program, we look at at our output, how we're increasing capacity. What we're also doing, which might be interesting for some of you as well, is we're looking at what's the social and environmental impact of each entrepreneur, and then we add it together. So we can say, overall, this number of people have been reached. Overall, this number of tons of CO2 has been reduced, or this number of, this contribution towards SDG 3 health. That's quite nice. You can look at it in two ways, both what you're contributing in terms of skills, but also what's the impact together as a whole. And so I love that. I look forward to seeing your results. Well, I want to say thank you very, very much. On the course, I'm a course tutor, so I will be available through the course chat as well. So if you do the course, or any of your entrepreneurs do, and you ask me a question in the forum, I will answer it. I check the forum every few days, so feel free to use that if you'd like to. And it's been such a pleasure and honor to meet you all. So from my side, thank you very much. Over to you, Myra.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So I would like to thank everyone that have joined the session to help us also, I guess, measure our impact. I'm posting in the chat little evaluation form. It doesn't take even like 5 minutes for you to complete, less than that. And through this form, we keep the topics of those sessions up to date to your needs. This is through this form that we also get your feedback to understand a little bit better what works and what doesn't for you, and brainstorm future topics for sessions. The next session in this series is going to take place towards the end of the month. You will all, I assume, be informed of that. We will promote it widely through our different networks and through the mailing list. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you all soon again. Thank you very much, and thanks very much, Tanya, again.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you put a little feedback form. Since this is about impact management, do all fill it out. It's incredible how it helps. Also good for you to see it, because I think it's I just checked it, it's a very well-written form. So you'll see a good example of a good survey to collect user feedback. Thank you very much, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks a lot, Tanya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Tanya. Bye.
Thank you for your thank yous in the chat as well. Myra, shall I stay on for a minute, or are we done?
I'll connect with you on a different link.
Okay.
Okay.
So, bye for now.